Remarkable people overcoming remarkable challenges with resilience, dedication, community, and grit. Listen as they share their stories of overcoming adversity. Open your eyes to what is genuinely possible for all of us. Authentic Adversity with host Chris Howe.
Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast. If you like the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Today, I sit down with a Muay Thai fighter, a trainer, an author, and a speaker. This is Kevin Ross. Welcome, man.
What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I've got no complaints, man.
Excellent. Man, I've been really looking forward to this interview. I think unknowingly, you've played actually a pretty big part in my life since I got sober. We've never actually met, but when I got sober, the first place I went to was a Muay Thai gym because I needed to move my body and I needed to, I needed something to give me that same rush as drugs and alcohol were, but in a healthy outlet, right?
For sure.
So I walked up the stairs to this Muay Thai gym and I saw this poster with these knuckles across it, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's cool. Who's this guy? And I asked the owner there and he said, oh, that's Kevin Ross. He's kind of like the face of Muay Thai in America right now. Like he's done a whole lot in Thailand and all over the world, but he's really making a big impact in North America with Muay Thai. So I did the class. I suffered through it, and when I went home, I Googled your name. And listen, I was 32 when I got sober, so I got into the sport really late in life. I Googled your name, started looking at stuff, and I found out, oh my God, this guy's sober. And like, I kept digging, and it was like, this guy's telling my story a little bit. And so it was a big motivator for me to know that somebody like yourself that had done so much in the sport had come from a similar background as me. And, you were somebody to, for a long time. Well, still, you're somebody for me to look up to in the sport and in life and in sobriety. And that really helped me. It really helped me kind of push through those tough times in early sobriety and kept me really dialed into the sport. And, another thing, and I've mentioned this to you before, like, I tore my ACL about 7 years ago, and I've actually just done it again about a month ago. But, your story, I believe it was probably about a year after you did yours, and seeing your comeback story. I used to go in the gym and I had to do these little exercises to rehab my knee. And I used to sit on the bike and watch these stories about you. And there was one YouTube video that I watched about you telling, your first fight, like 9 months after you had your surgery or something. And it was like just such a huge motivator for me to know that, like, you can bounce back from a surgery like that or an injury like that. And it really kept my mind positive. And so, I mean, first of all, I want to say thank you for that, because, like, as I said, unknowingly, you've played like a big part in motivating me to, like, push myself through things. And and then your story is quite remarkable. You've been on big podcasts and you've shared your story, and it's really, really captivating. And to have you as a guest is really quite an honor. And I just I want to thank you for that. And I'm really looking forward to getting into kind of what life was like growing up for you, what life, what brought you through addiction, what got you out of addiction, and where you are today. So, man, I don't know. I usually start out with, like, can you sort of paint a picture for us about, like, what early life was like for you?
Yeah, I can try to sum it up as best I can. When I was born up until I was 8, I lived in the typical American dream family, loving parents, brothers and sisters, lived in an affluent neighborhood. My father did very well. I grew up thinking that was the way that life is, and the way life will continue to be.
Okay.
No real hardships, or, I mean, I was only 8, so there wasn't a lot of time, but your early childhood really sets the tone for a lot of things. So and then when I was 8 is when my parents split up, and we immediately went from that kind of lifestyle to myself, my mother, my brother, my two sisters living in one of her friends' in a room in her friend's basement, growing up on welfare, moving from house to house, just getting ripped out of everything I thought was reality was gone.
Right.
And my entire perception of life got flipped upside down.
Yeah.
You know, and I came to realize very, very early on that nothing is secure. You're not safe. Unfortunately, that all got pointed in that really negative direction where what's the point of doing anything? What's the point of trying? Because if you try, you're just going to fail. Someone's going to take it away from you. Things are going to get destroyed. People are going to die. You're going to get sick. All those negative aspects of that. And I just accepted that was the way that life is and will continue to be, and that there's nothing you can do about it. Basically, your story is set and you don't have no say.
Right.
You know, I really fell into that victim mentality of thinking there's nothing I can do about it because this is just the way that it is. So why even bother?
Yeah.
You know, and which, you know, so many of us do, whether the circumstances are real or imagined, we feel like we have no control.
Yes.
You know, and there certainly are most things we don't have control over, but there's a lot of things we do have control over. And at the very least, we have control over how we view these things, our perspective of these things. And unfortunately, I didn't learn that lesson until I decided to turn my life around at 23. So growing up, you know, as I said, we were moving every couple of months, every 6 months. I went to so many different schools. Any time I even remotely started feeling comfortable or okay, if we're going to sit still for a minute, it was just like gone.
Yeah.
My mom kept getting married, divorced. We'd move for various reasons. There was a lot going on. And really, I grew up all over the country, East Coast, West Coast. And then finally, when I was 14 is when I finally moved in with my father. And then right when I moved in with him, I was like, okay, finally we're going to be stable. You know, we got money, we got a big house, you know, this is going to be great. And then I think like a month later, we ended up moving from Georgia all the way to Vegas. And I was like, motherfucker, man, like I don't even know why I bother, you know? So it was just like every time I thought things were going to be okay now, it was like wrong, you know? And then I was already into kind of that partying, drinking, and I started drinking and doing drugs when I was like 12. Okay. So going there was just the worst thing ever because it's everywhere. It really progressed from there because of being in Vegas. And, you know, I was in high school, and then, you know, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. I mean, even before I turned 21, I was already physically dependent on drinking. You know, I had to drink every day. And it wasn't, I wouldn't even say it was like something I thought about. It was like, I just did drink every day. Right. And then when I didn't, things were like, I'd start getting kind of antsy and shakes. I kind of always compared it to like someone that smokes a lot. It's like, if they don't smoke, they can't maintain that level. So it was like that.
I get that 100%. I was the same. And like when you when you started drinking and using, was it for an escape, or was it for like, you know, were you escaping that feeling of like not having that stability in life or, you know, a place?
Yeah, I guess I mean, it really was anything other than the way that I felt or the reality that I was in was better. Yeah. Even if whether it was drugs and alcohol, whether it was, I did a lot of self-harm. I used to cut myself. I used to beat myself up and like burn myself, a lot of shit like that. Cause for me, that was the one thing I had control over, you know, even though it was painful. It's like, I can do this to myself and I'm in control, and nothing externally is doing this to me. I'm doing it. Yeah. So that always gave me a sense of taking that control back of out of the chaos. And even though it was extremely destructive, it felt in many ways very therapeutic too. Because absolutely, I guess for myself, it was like, it's either that or taking it externally, you know. And I've always been more inclined to self-destruct than to try to destroy other people's lives. I guess they're both bad, but at least I guess I feel I'd rather, it's like somebody else didn't do it. Like,
Yeah.
it's my fault. So
I'm responsible for this. And it is that control piece, like you mentioned, it's something in your life that is under your control when everything else feels out of control, right?
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
wasn't, at the time and during all those years, I didn't really recognize that's what it was.
Yeah.
It just was like, I know this makes me feel better, or at least it makes me feel different.
Yes.
And yeah, it really gave me that sense of release of stress and tension, and pain never bothered me because I guess I don't think physical pain can compare to any kind of emotional pain.
You're absolutely right.
So
Yeah.
I think that for myself, it almost became my like superpowers. Like this, there's nothing physical that can hurt me.
Right.
So I'm going to use this to feel better.
Yeah.
Instead of, even though it was destroying my body and like doing a lot of harmful things, it was the only thing that would help,
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that I had something. I wish I would have had something more healthy at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
But it could have been a lot worse if I didn't have an outlet for that. It would have gone external, and I think it would have probably done some serious damage.
I can definitely relate to that. I did a lot of those same things in my younger years, and now looking back at it, I can identify it. It was, I needed to feel something, and I needed to feel, like you mentioned, that control piece was really, really important for me, because everything else around me was out of my control, and it was all negative stuff. And even though the pain of hurting myself, the destruction I was doing with drugs and alcohol to my body as well, I was responsible for it. I got to choose if I ingested that, or if I cut myself, or if I hurt myself. And that was the only thing in life that I did have any control over. And and I clung to that for a lot of years.
And it was feeling like it was the one thing that was mine. I was like, this is mine. It's not yours. You can't tell me what to do with it. It's mine. And I'm gonna do whatever I want with it. Fortunately, I stopped cutting myself and doing all that when I was around 18. One of my ex-girlfriends was like, "Why are you always cutting yourself? Why don't you just go get tattoos or do something like that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not really fucking the same thing." But I did start getting tattoos, and I was like, "Yeah, this is kind of fucking stupid." And I just kind of moved that to something else. I started getting the tattoos and stuff. I mean, I was still drinking and doing all that, but I stopped with the self-harm as far as that kind of thing. Obviously, I was still drinking and doing drugs, so the harm was still happening.
For sure.
But I stopped with that kind of thing when I was like 18, which was good. But it didn't really take away from all the other stuff. So it didn't necessarily help a lot. But yeah, but then the alcohol really progressed from the time I was like 16 on. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it was just, and all my friends, I mean, they were the same way. We would just drink every single day. It was just what we did.
Yep.
Just hammering 40s all day, every day.
Yeah.
And then I worked in the casinos because I was doing a caricature art. So I could just go on my break and get a beer, and it's not like nobody fucking cares.
Sure. You can walk around on the street with it, right?
It's totally normal. So it really, it helped in a lot of ways. That lifestyle in Vegas almost normalizes that.
Sure.
Where it doesn't seem weird to be drinking at noon, having lunch.
Right.
People are on vacation and, you're in Vegas. You're constantly surrounded by that kind of mentality and outlook. So you think it's totally normal, and it feels normal, and it feels abnormal not to do it.
I bet. This episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast is brought to you and sponsored by Another Road Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. Another Road offers a client-centered recovery program tailored to every individual's circumstances. Their focus is to create a supportive, healing environment rather than a rigid, rule-based institution. Their dedicated commitment upholds the individual values, respecting each person's desire for recovery. Another Road understands that every individual requires a unique and focused approach to their recovery. Certain modalities of treatment are introduced along with the tools necessary for each client. Located in a rural setting, their addiction treatment center for all genders provides the perfect setting for a transformative recovery experience and sense of belonging. The private residential treatment facility offers an unparalleled program with counselors that have in-depth knowledge based on varying years of experience in addiction. Another road utilizes unique individual focus plans for recovery that address the complexities of drug addiction, alcoholism, and prescription medication misuse. They have a 65% success rate when clients follow their program. I know many people who have completed this program and they have absolutely rave reviews. To learn more, visit anotherroad.ca.
So I grew up, I always loved fighting, martial arts, boxing, that kind of thing. I was always very, very athletic, but I hated team sports, like with a passion. I despised having to rely on other people. So I never really pushed myself to excel in team sports. I love playing them, and then on the outside of the actual team, like just hanging out with friends. I mean, I loved to compete physically and play stuff like that, but I never really liked the team thing. So I never pushed myself in that regard. And then by the time I was in high school, I was like, dude, I don't want to fucking like do this shit anymore. And I hated kind of the mentality, the athlete jock mentality. There was, from everything I was exposed to, was always very negative and a lot of shitheads. And, obviously my perspective was skewed for various reasons. But
for sure,
we
but
always,
I can get that.
I was, but I always got along with everyone. I could have at least acquaintances in basically every group of people everywhere. I've always been that kind of person where I never necessarily felt like I fit into a group, but I could get along with just about everybody, from the athletes to the fucking stoners to the metalheads to the nerds. I've always been that kind of person. I think that a lot of that comes from just growing up in so many different places and different kinds of lifestyles. But I also think I've always been that kind of person.
Yeah, I can imagine if you're moving around and you're being uprooted so much, it's like you have to find inroads everywhere you go. So it's almost like you might, to a degree, do a lot of people pleasing to almost like, okay, I can fit in with these people, but then I can kind of be the chameleon and go to this group and be another person and that sort of thing. I mean, I was that way for sure. And,
Well, for myself, it was more, I think I just understood people more so and was not judgmental of people. Not necessarily that with each group I fit in and like, oh, I'm going to be this way now and I'm going to be this way. Now. I was just like, I'm me, you're you. I don't need to be that. You don't need to be this. I've always been just open to different
that's cool.
people and lifestyles. And I think there's a variety of reasons for that. Again, growing up everywhere, I think my parents were that way as well, not very judgmental or, put this perception of certain types of people. I never really had that, or I never really even understood that until I started seeing it a lot more. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Like, why does everybody hate each other? Like, everyone's just people, right?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so like I said, I always loved fighting. Anytime I saw boxing fights and things like that, I was like, oh, I'd love to do that one day. Which is, people don't know it now, wouldn't recognize it now, but I was extremely shy, especially once my parents divorced. I like completely shut down. I didn't speak hardly ever. I mean, most people think I'm a really quiet person, but I used to I would never say a word ever to anyone. I was very quiet and shy, and definitely, like I said, I was physical in the regard that like I could be athletic, but I wasn't an aggressive. Well, I was an aggressive athlete, but I wasn't that kind of violent. Like, oh, that you should go fight, So it was so far from what you would think.
You weren't out there catching street fights and like.
No, and like a lot of my friends were like I remember one of my buddies in Colorado. Like this kid would get into fights like every week. Yeah. And there was something that always intrigued me by it, but I hated to see people upset though. Like I hated that. I really like it. It hurt me to see other people hurting. I love to see there was something about the actual violence of it subtracted from the emotional anger about it, you know.
Right.
And then when I saw fighting on TV, I was like, oh, you don't actually have, I mean, even though, you know, a lot of people play into the emotional aspect of it, you don't have to be angry. It doesn't have to be a personal thing, you know.
Right.
And I think that's why I was always drawn to it, and it always intrigued me a lot. But again, it did seem so far from anything that I could or would ever do, but it was always in the back of my mind, you know.
Yeah.
So when I first moved to Vegas, 14, 15, is the first time I ever saw Muay Thai. I was watching ESPN at like 2:00 in the morning, and they used to show all these old Muay Thai and like kickboxing, and they would do karate. You know, they'd show a lot of just random stuff like that. And the announcer comes on. He's like, all right, this next fight is a Muay Thai bout between blah, 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 blah. And I'd never heard of Muay Thai ever. I didn't even know what it was. And then when I saw those two Thai guys fight, I was like, oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
Because as I said, I always thought about maybe boxing, but I loved martial arts so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I never saw any real fighting when it came to martial arts. It's always point sparring, forms, not fighting like boxers fight, you know?
Yeah.
And then when I saw that, I was like, that's it. That is it right there. It's like, if I'm ever going to do this, I'm going to fucking do that shit right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was so it just like lit this fire in me, man. I was like all about it. But at the same time, I was already had all my doubts and fears. And then on top of my drinking and everything else, I was like, I'm not really going to fucking do that. Like,
yeah.
I want to, but what it would take for me to do that, like, this shit ain't going to happen. I've always been an all or nothing kind of guy, you know, good and bad. So when I'm drinking, I'm gonna drink everything in the house. So when it comes to doing something new, I'm not just gonna half-ass it. You know, I don't want to ever do that. So if I'm gonna go after something, I'm gonna go after it. And I knew I wasn't ready to do that, but I actually went down and met with one of the schools, Master Toddy's, where I started. I actually went down and talked to them back in I think it was 98. I went down there and I talked to one of the trainers, and he was like, all right. I was like, I want to fight, and what's it going to take? Or I knew that my quickest way to get into the ring would be to take private lessons, you know, one-on-one training. So then I was like, all right, how much is that? And then he told me, I'm like, all right, fuck. That ain't going to fucking happen.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, well, maybe I can take the classes, and then once in a while take private lessons. But even the classes was like, I mean, I don't have any fucking money, man. I'm like, I can't afford this. So I left just feeling very defeated, but at the same time, it almost justified not doing this, because like, well, I can't afford it, you know. So regardless, you know, I didn't have to think about, oh, I'm too scared to do this, and like, what if I fail? I was like, oh, I can't afford it. So I didn't even have to think about that. You know, so
isn't it funny how we do that? Like, we can't afford the thing that will be healthy for us, that we're daydreaming about all the time, but somehow we manage to afford to drink all day every day.
It's weird how that works, right?
Yeah.
Like most things in life, it's really just about everything. It's where are you putting your time and energy into, and what are you using that for, that you could be using towards the thing that you actually want to do? It's not to say that you don't have time. You have time, you're just not using it right. And you have money, you're just not using it right. And in all of those other aspects. So that all does come down to that accountability, and you know, looking what you can do, not what's external about why you can't make it or whatever else. It's like, maybe those things are true, but what are you doing first? If you can start there, now you really know what you can and can't do. But if you're not even willing to go there, then it's just this fake external thing. Oh, I can't make it because X, Y, and Z. And it just justifies why we never go after things, when it all just comes down to we're just making excuses for ourselves. Yeah. So anyway, I put it in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, it can't happen. And I just tried to forget about it. And then anytime I'd see a fight, it was like, light that flame back. I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
And it was almost as if I knew subconsciously that I was not going after this because I was afraid. So I would have to suppress it that much harder each time.
Okay.
Anytime I would see a fight, I'm like drinking harder, you know, just trying to like suffocate that it was like this dream inside of me, or this seed that had been planted. I was trying to just bury it till I never thought about it again. And I thought that I had. I just completely stopped it. It was so far from the realm of possibility that it was just like, yeah, well, that was just a stupid fucking never gonna happen dream. Like, what's the point? You weren't gonna make it anyway. So then 99, one of my best friends passed away. He actually had been born with a heart defect, and he didn't get the transplant and ended up passing away. And he was actually the only person I'd ever told about this dream I had of fighting. And I'd never spoken it to a single person ever. I never dared speak it out loud. And years prior to that, we'd been up on his roof hanging out, drinking, just me and him. And he just asked me out of the blue. He's like, "Hey, what do you want to do with your life?" And I'm like, 17 at the time, and we're drinking. I'm like, who asks a question like that? Like, what kid asks, especially a kid like me, would ask a question like that? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? What does that even mean? What am I going to do? I never really thought I was going to live very long, so I never even thought about the future. Like, there wasn't going to be a future in my mind. So that was just like this crazy, stupid question. Like, what are you going to do with what are you going to do when you're 100? Like, what are you talking about, man? And for whatever reason, I told him, I was like, yeah, I've always wanted to fight. I thought he was going to laugh his ass off, like, fucking like die laughing. And again, like I said before, if you knew me back then, you would understand why he would have done that. But he didn't laugh, and he said, I think you should. I think you should do it. He's like, if anybody can do it, you can. I don't know why he said that. I don't know why he thought that. But it really encouraged me. And even just in that brief moment, I thought about, what if, maybe I could. But and then
it's like he saw something in you that you couldn't see in yourself, and he
I was like, I don't know what that is. I don't know why he would have thought that or said that. Talking to some of my friends from back then now, they always said there was something different inside of me, and they didn't know what it was, but there was something very different. Anyway, so when he passed away, the night he passed away, we're all getting fucking hammered and trying to deal with our emotions that way. And I promised myself, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go after this dream. I was like, my friend didn't get a chance to fail at a dream, and here I am, too afraid to even try, just because I have no excuses anymore. He didn't get to do shit, man. And I had to, even if I'm not doing it for myself, I have to do it for him. I gotta live my life for him. And unfortunately, his death just sent all of us just off the edge of the cliff. We were already barely hanging on as it was, and then it got really, really, really awful after that. And a bunch of my friends went to jail, died, car wrecks and DUIs. And it was really bad. And then going into the end of 2002, there was just this series of, it was like a month long, every other day, every other week, something really bad happened. Somebody died, somebody went to jail, somebody got a DUI. I almost got I got pulled over doing like 100 and something one night, fucking hammered out of my mind. And for whatever reason, the cop let me go. But for some reason, when he pulled me over, I was very calm. I was just totally fine with it. And anyway, he ended up letting me go. I never drove drunk ever again from that time forward. Thank God.
Wow.
Because I got away with it for so many years. And that was the last time I ever did that. But there was these successive series of events happening where I was like, you better wake up. You better wake up. Like, how many chances do you think you're going to get?
Yeah. It's almost like, I hate to use the word the universe, but something is trying to tell us something, and they're throwing all this shit at us.
Yeah.
And it's saying, like, you're going the wrong way. You're going completely in the wrong direction. You got to move. You got to switch it up. You got to, like, redirect your life, right? I had the really quite similar. The last few years of my drinking and using career was, I was losing friends every month. I was getting thrown in jail. I was getting, caught, chased by the cops. I was getting, it was all these things that I always said, was never going to happen to me. I'm not an addict. I'm not an alcoholic because I haven't done that. All the shit was happening to me.
Yeah.
And it was like I said, like something's telling me go the other way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always knew I was an alcoholic, but, you know, it is that sense of, oh, that's probably not going to happen, you know, but eventually it was like the numbers are coming up and eventually your numbers coming up. So I saw the chain of events that were happening. I saw all these things that were happening to my friends. And so that really, that started part of the wake up call, but there was still another like year or two. But I stopped drinking and driving, which started to limit my opportunities to go out, because I wouldn't get in the car with anyone else who was drinking and driving either.
Okay.
You know, so that really limited my going out on the town or anything like that. So it was always like, I'm gonna stay home and drink by myself. That kind of
safe.
Yeah, stay safe. That's where that started. And as I said earlier, I never thought I was gonna live very long. And for whatever reason, something in my head told me I'd never see the year 2000. I don't know what it was. I don't know why. But we were actually going to a New Year's party right before going into 2000. So January or December 31st, 1999. We're like an hour from New Year's. One of my buddies, Joe, he used to have this hot rod fucking Mustang. He used to race all the time. And so we were driving to a party. It was, he was driving. I was in the backseat. My buddy Pat was sitting in the front, and this Corvette pulls up wanting to race. It's like, all right, so we fucking like take off, and we're like flying down the street, getting up to like 150, and then up ahead there's an intersection. It was way in the distance, so I didn't think anything of it. We had a green light, but eventually the light turns yellow, and we're getting closer, and then I realized we're not fucking slowing down. And then all of a sudden the light goes red and the cars start going through, and we're not slowing down. And in that moment, I was like, this is it. This is that moment that you're going to die, because I knew I wasn't going to make it. And right as we're going into the intersection, he takes a hard right turn. His car's fishtailing out in the intersection. Wheels are spinning. I look out the back of the car, and there's this semi truck about to fucking plow right through us. I'm like, oh, motherfucker.
Oh my God.
And right at that moment, his tires caught and just barely kept it from hitting us, and we take off, and and then go off into the night. And it was another one of those wake up calls. Like that was one of the ones where it was like, you're not supposed to be here now.
Yeah.
You know, and it still took me another 3 years to actually turn my life around. But all of those things eventually accumulated to where I realized you're not supposed to be here anyway. You promised your friend you'd start living for 2. And what have you done for the last 3 years? Fucking jack shit. Not only have you not done better, you've done so much worse. Much worse.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't look myself in the mirror anymore, knowing that, you know, I couldn't pretend I wasn't doing that anymore. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I was like, you are doing this, and you do have a choice. All that victim mentality shit went out the window. I was like, you have a choice. All those other things you couldn't have any control over, but you're choosing to drink every day. You're choosing to live in depression and feel sorry for yourself and not go after things because of you're just making fucking excuses for yourself. And I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. And the first week of January 2003 is when I walked back into the gym and got started, and just that's where I went from there on forward.
When you walked back into the gym, had you made like the decision that I'm not drinking and using anymore?
I made the decision that every single thing I'm doing from this point forward is to go in the opposite direction. I knew, I was like, I don't know where it goes. I don't know what's going to happen. I know what the other direction leads to. So I really took the debate out of my mind. There wasn't a choice anymore. Well, there was a choice, but it was you're only going left or you're only going right. There's no in between. There's no, I'm gonna kind of half-ass it. It
Yeah.
was, you're either going 100% this way, you're going 100% the other way. And I knew where that other direction led. So I want to do everything in my power to go the other way. So for myself, getting started and everything I had to put into this sport was my rehab. I didn't even think about drinking. I
Right.
couldn't think about shit else. Like, this was it.
Yeah.
I had no time or energy. It's not like there's times I'm like sitting around. It's like, if I'm sitting around,
Yeah.
I'm doing something to get better at that. I'm watching fights.
Yeah.
I'm training. I'm doing everything in my power. I'm studying. I'm doing whatever I can. So I'm trying to get my health back. I'm running. I'm doing all that. So it
Yeah.
consumed me 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
There was no time for anything else, and
Right.
there was no debate about it either, because
Yeah.
I viewed everything, and I have viewed everything from 2000 forward as extra credit. Like, you're not supposed to be here anyway. What are you
Yeah.
going to do with this time that you have? Anytime.
Right.
That's why anytime there was like really fucking crazy fights or situations like that, it took a lot of the fear out of it. It's not to say I didn't have fear. It's to say I realized it doesn't matter if there's fear. What are you going to do
Yeah.
about it? It doesn't matter how you
Right.
feel. You're either going left or you're going right. There's no
Yeah.
debate. There's, oh, I'm scared. I don't know if I can. It's like, I am going this way. Whatever's
Right.
whatever's going to get in my way, I'm going through it. I'm going to go around it. I'm going to go
Yeah.
under it, or I'm going
Yeah.
to hang out with it, but I'm not going back.
I think that's important for a lot of people to know that may be kind of teetering on that edge of, giving up a certain lifestyle and well, I think a lot of people are scared, first of all, to give up whatever their vice is: drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, whatever that thing is for them, because what is life going to be like without it? But when you have something like that you can pour everything into, as you said, you become obsessed with this healthy outlet,
Yeah.
and there's no room for that other vice anymore. And
Hmm.
as you said, like, it's left or right. You know
Yeah.
what happens if you go left. You've been going left long enough. Keep going right.
Yeah.
That's the right direction. That's where you need to go, and in a non-negotiable kind of way, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
There was
you're gonna
no
have shitty days. You're
negotiating.
gonna have, yeah, like, things are gonna happen. Not every day is gonna be great. It's gonna be so fucking hard. But the hardest day on, going in this direction is a lot easier than it was when we went left, right?
Yeah,
So I
it's
mean,
better. It's a lot better, is what it is. It's definitely
yeah,
better, no matter how bad it gets.
yeah,
It's always going to be better going in that direction. Like you said, the worst and hardest day doing what you love, or at least going in that direction,
yeah,
is better than the best day not doing that.
yeah,
It's completely separates that, and takes a lot of that away, and it really completely alters your perception of reality in a lot of ways. Like, you don't
yeah,
even understand, because we're looking through these lenses when we're in a certain lifestyle, and we think this is what reality is.
right,
And it's so hard to even see anything different than that until you make that choice and take those shades off and start looking
yeah,
the other way. And you realize, I mean, that's in all of life too.
yeah,
There's a million different realities going on, depending on what you're looking at, what you're surrounded by, who you're
mm-hmm,
listening to,
yeah,
what your diet's like. All these things change the lenses that are in front of your eyes. And we all think we're looking at this unbiased reality that we're all interacting with in the same way. We're all looking at completely different things,
for sure,
and I think
yeah,
that's what messes a lot of us up, is the fact that we think we're all looking at the same shit, coming to different conclusions. We're not looking at the same thing, not even a little bit.
exactly. Everyone's looking through a different lens, and everyone's perception is completely different. So their reality, my reality is much different than what your reality is, and
Yeah.
our perception is not the same. But
Yeah, completely.
as you said, um, if you have that, if you widen that view, you know what I
Hmm.
mean, and you actually, like, stop pigeonholing yourself into this life that isn't going your way, and you realize, because I know for myself, when I gave up drugs and alcohol, I was convinced that everybody out there that was going to work on a 9 to 5 was faking it, that they were all going to pick up, that they were fucked up, I was convinced that the rest of the world lived like I did.
Well, a lot of
And
them do.
well, yeah, very true. But I mean,
Not
I
everyone.
just
Not
didn't
everyone.
know. Well, I didn't know that there was I didn't know that recovery was actually possible, and
Yeah.
B, I thought, what kind of fun is it going to be? What am I going to do? This is my life.
Yeah.
This is what I do. This is who I am. Drugs,
Yeah.
alcohol, that's what I think I'm good at, you know? And then
Mhm.
when I actually kind of cross that bridge and get to the other side and realize all the things that are available to me and how much better my life could be, um, the communities that I can be involved in, the supportive networks that I can have around me through things like fighting, working out, eating right,
Mhm.
just hanging out at normal places instead of hanging out in dope houses and bars. I
Yeah.
was forced to change because I was putting myself in these places with all these people doing healthy things. And, I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised when I realized that life without that, without addiction or drugs and alcohol in it, actually was so much better, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it can be exciting, like as I said at the beginning, like I went in, I walked into the Muay Thai gym. I have a Thai aunt, and like she used to always play Muay Thai fights for me, and her brothers were fighters over there, and
Oh, yeah.
so I was always kind of like enamored by it as well. But same
Uh-huh.
thing, I always thought there's no way I could never do that. And quite frankly, I'm scared. I wasn't a scrappy kid. I wasn't a
Yeah.
fighter. I wasn't nothing like that. When I realized that, like, okay, I can go in here and train, and it's actually people are welcoming. People want to see you succeed. People are like,
Mhm.
your biggest cheerleaders or fans are your teammates, and to see that world, it was like I didn't know it existed,
Uh-huh.
and so that to me was like a major, major change. And I mean, it sounds like the same for you, and you became, obsessed with it to the
Yeah.
point where there was no room for anything else. What was
Mhm.
that like for you? How old were you when you started?
23.
23.
Yeah.
And going from the lifestyle you were leading to, serious training, and like was it something that you picked up on quickly, or was it like an everyday challenge? And
Yeah, I mean, I picked up on it. As I said, I've always been athletic.
yeah,
Even when I was drinking and partying, like I was always working out and not
yeah,
really working out. Like, yeah, I'd work out once in a while, or we'd go play football and
right,
casually doing physical things. So it's not like I was just a loaf sitting on the couch or anything. But yeah, so anything physical, I've always been able to kind of do, at least to the level of being competitive. Like any
right,
sport I ever picked up, like I can play it enough to where this will be fun for
yeah,
us. Like
yeah,
I might not be very good, but I'll at least make it enjoyable. So yeah, it was just like this brand new world had been opened up, and I was just trying to absorb as much as I could, because I knew how late I had started, and then B, I knew how much of my life I had wasted, which I was
yeah,
trying to make up for, and then
yeah,
see how unlikely it was, how far I was, not only how far I was behind, but I knew how far like America was behind the global
right,
scene. So everything was playing catch up. There was no
okay,
room for taking it easy or taking days
yeah,
off, or I set my sights on just the impossible. So
yeah,
everything I'm doing is trying to catapult me higher and higher and higher and higher. I'm going to dive into the deep end of every single thing that I do. I'm going to train as hard as possible. I'm going to get the shit kicked out of me as much as possible.
yeah,
In that, because I took all that debate about fear and everything else, it was just like, what can we do to be the best that we can be? And I'm going to go do
yeah,
it. And I think that's why I also progressed as quickly as I did, because every moment of every day was geared towards this in my mind, in my body, in my spirit. I was catapulting myself ahead of everybody else because I was doing so much more, and I was so much more focused and driven that, within just a couple of months, people thought I'd been doing it for years and years.
is that right?
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's great. So I mean, you must have started fighting like soon after. You probably were like antsy to get your first fights and
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, again, when I started, I was like, I want to fight. This is the only reason
Hmm.
I'm doing this. I'm not doing this
Yeah,
to be a good martial artist or any of that other stuff. That was secondary. I was like, I'm doing this only to get in the ring. I'm not, and I didn't think any far past that. I didn't even know what was beyond that. I was like, I need to get in the ring. What do I need to do to get in the ring? So every day I was like, when do I get the fight? When do I get the fight? When do I get the fight? And finally, 9 months in is when I had my first fight, and we went up to Salt Lake City, and the guy I was supposed to fight ended up coming in heavy. So they matched him up with one of the other guys I trained with, who was a little bit bigger than me. But then I didn't have a fight, and I was fucking just devastated, dude, because it was like 9 months of just 24 hours a day going towards this. Like, when do I get to do this? My family had driven up with me. Gina had come up with me. And then they were just like, we don't have anybody for you. And the promoter or the gym owner, he was like, all right, let me see what I can do. Let me see if I can find somebody to come in last minute. So we left and just feeling devastated. And then he's like, all right, well, I could only find one person. He's already had 20 fights and he's got 20 pounds on you.
No shit. Oh, fuck.
I was like,
so wait, the guy came in overweight. Your original partner came in, or your original matchup came in overweight. Then he put you 20 pounds over.
20 pounds. So the first guy came in like 5 pounds heavy. I'm like, this is bullshit. But I didn't give a fuck, man. I was like, I didn't care how it could be 200 pounds. I didn't care. I didn't even think about it. You know, it wasn't even a question or a doubt in my mind. So I actually ended up having to. They needed me to get to as close to his weight as possible. So I had to go in there. I pounded a gallon of water, ate all this food, put all these clothes on, had my boots on. I think I was still like 5 or 10 pounds underweight. But they were like, all right, we just need you to get closer. When I started, I was progressing so rapidly, you know? So I, in my mind, assumed this is what happens when you start going after something positive and something you want. Everything's going to just open up and it's going to be great. Everything's going to work out from here. So I was like, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to smash this fucking guy. And I'm going to catapult right to the top. You know, I'm just going to keep on going the way I've been going. And, I fucking got stomped out so bad. I went out there. I completely gassed out in like 30 seconds. Cause you know, it's like your first fight. You just go fucking ape shit. And, and I did. And knowing how big he was, how much experience he had, I was like, I just got to go at this fucking guy. And I did.
For a lucky knockout or something.
It was like 30 seconds in, it was like, completely drained, like felt like I was underwater. And he just fucking grabbed me up and kneed the shit out of me for 3 rounds. Finally, mercifully, they put a stop to the fight at the end of the 3rd round. I was fucking crushed, man. I was like, fuck, man. I was like, I thought I was going the right way. I thought that everything was going to work out from here. And then I went out there, I just fucking embarrassed myself. It had nothing to do with me that like he was huge and he had all this experience. I was like, I should have beaten him anyway. You know, I should have beaten him anyway. I actually like walked to the back. I'm all like beaten up and bloody and like plopped down and it just felt completely crushed, man. It felt like everything, all my dreams had just been destroyed in that fucking moment. And like, I was like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe all those things that I thought were going to happen and all those reasons I didn't go after this were true. And I should have listened to myself.
Right.
Yeah. And it was fucking horrible, man. It was this horrible feeling. And my opponent actually comes in and he's like, dude, that was your first fight? Fuck, man. He's like, I don't want to see you in like a year from now.
Right.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it made me feel good and it encouraged me. But at the same time, I was just like stuck in the weight of just feeling like I was wrong about everything. And then the next day, when we were driving back to Vegas, I'm sitting there with it in those same thoughts and feelings I had prior. It was like, well, what are you going to do about it? You know, all those excuses you had prior and everything and all the promises you made to your friends, like, nothing matters. Like, these things are going to happen. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to let this destroy you, or are you going to use this
Right.
as fuel to get better and to get stronger? And
Yeah.
I realized, like all those other things, like, you have a choice to make. What are you going
Right.
to do with it? It doesn't matter what happened. It matters, what are you going to do with it? And I was like, all right, well, I have a choice to make, and I know which way I'm fucking going. So
Yeah.
I got in the gym the next day. First thing I did was walked up to my trainer. I'm like, when do I get to fight again? And then I fucking got to work, man. And it was that much more fuel for me. I was like, I'm never going to fucking let that shit happen to me ever, ever again.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it showed me very early on, even though it was my first fight and I gassed out, is that feeling of gassing out. It's like, I don't ever want to feel that ever again in my whole fucking life. So that's why it's from that point forward, my conditioning has always been my number one priority beyond anything else, because I know as long as I at least have that, then I really know where I'm sitting, because anything else is like, well, you didn't train hard enough. You weren't in good enough shape. I'm like, I already knew how much I had working against me with my age, the country I was in, my lack of experience. I need to do everything in my power, in my conditioning, in my cardio. That's one thing I have control over. And it was also something I saw so many people half-ass and have throughout my whole fucking career. I'm like, I don't understand why you guys don't train harder, because that's the one thing you have control over, like how good a shape you're in. And you're gonna, I mean, no matter how good a shape you're in, like, this shit's fucking hard and you get tired. And, I want to be at the peak level of conditioning. That way, anything externally is just other external factors. Like, that's something I will always have control over. That I don't have control over who I'm facing necessarily, the injuries, the sicknesses, all those other things. I can control how good a shape I'm in and how good a shape I maintain. And I don't take time off, and, I don't let myself get fat and things like that. I need to always be pushing that envelope as hard as I can for as long as I can, because just like I knew all this is extra credit to me, I know that every day can be my last. It can be my last day alive, but it can be my last day fighting. Anything can happen.
Right.
So I've always known that, and I've always approached not only fighting but my life in that aspect, because I know that I'm not supposed to be here. Because there's so many things that happen, but I mean, when you look at it, none of us should be here. Like, what are you doing with the time that you have? Because tomorrow it might be it. We just don't think it's going to happen, but it more than likely will happen before you want it to.
For sure, for sure. I mean, yeah, I think about that every morning. I've been forced to, because I was much like yourself. I had, you said you had the year 2000 in your mind, and I had the age 35 in mind. And I got sober before I was 35. I'm 45 now, and I'm the same way. I look at every day as like a bonus, because I didn't expect to be here, and had I kept going in the direction I was going, I certainly would not still be here. I know that as fact. Like, I was actively trying to kill myself, and so every morning I have to. I mean, it's part of my recovery. It's part of my routine. If I'm not grateful for waking up in the morning and having another 24 hours ahead of me to do something and better myself in one way, shape, or form, and actually, like, give back in some way, help another person, be kind, be compassionate, be all that stuff. I've wasted that time, and I don't want to ever look back and think I wasted enough time in active addiction. I never want to look back and say I wasted the years when I was sober. So every day I think it's very much the same as you, I got to be always progressing. I always got to be, keeping, everything moving forward. I don't want to stagnate in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, so many of the things and the lessons that you learn in fighting are relevant to every other aspect of life. It really magnifies those things we need to know in life, but they're not as immediately relevant as they are when you're training and when you're fighting, where you have to confront these things all the
Yeah.
time, these doubts, these fears, these physical things, these
Yeah.
emotional things, these battles that we all go through on a daily basis. You're forced to address them constantly, and it's
Yeah.
good because it keeps you sharp and it keeps you focused. And as long as you can transfer that into the other areas of your life and continue to do so, um, it's because the process is always the same for everything that we do in life. We just think that it's different because the details are different, but the
Right.
path is always the same. You got to go for this way. When
Yeah.
bad things happen, you got to adjust. You got to get stronger. You got to get better.
Right.
You have to expect adversity.
Yep.
It's all the same shit. You have to continually, daily, moment to moment, be pushing this forward, because if you're not pushing forward, you're going backwards. Anything you want to be good at, apply that to.
Yeah.
You'll at least be better than you were.
For sure. Let's talk about what you're doing, now with, in life. And, you're an author. So
Yeah.
are you writing a book, or have you written? Like, is it done?
Yeah. So I've actually been writing my autobiography for a long time.
Yeah.
It was hard when I'd have fights coming up, because I just couldn't focus on anything but
Yeah.
that. So it's always just been something that's been on the back burner. I do what I can when I can. And yeah, I've written 2 other books.
Okay.
But my actual autobiography, that's one of it's like a lifelong process. I don't know if I'll ever be done.
Well, and that's not something that, I mean, that's kind of it's not something that you sit down and you just jot things down. Like, you got to go deep into some of the things that maybe you haven't looked at for a long time, and it's
Yeah,
emotionally draining to go to those
yeah,
places, right?
yeah. So actually, when I was getting ready for my retirement fight, I had to completely stop writing,
Yeah.
because of that reason. It was really, you go through a lot thinking about that, your life, and the good and the
Yeah.
bad, and it's draining. It's
Yeah.
emotionally draining. And if every ounce of yourself has to be getting put towards this dangerous thing you're about to do, you can't do that. So I put it
Yeah.
down before my retirement fight, and I've been trying to pick it back up. It's so difficult though, because it's one of those things. Once you're immersed in it, it's a little bit easier. Just pick it up, put it down, right here, right
Yeah.
there. But trying to like get back into it, I'm like
Yeah.
really struggling to do that. But it's on top of my priority list to do that. And it is one of those things that I don't put a timeline on it, or a date I need to finish it by, because at its core, all of my stuff that I do, I do it for myself. I'm not doing this
Yeah.
to like, oh, I want to write this book that everybody reads and everybody buys. I'm like, yeah, that'd be great, but I need to like it first, and it needs to
Yeah.
be the way that I want it to be. Just like my artwork and things like that is, I do it for me, and then hopefully other people like it too. But I don't do it for you.
Right. I think that's good, and especially with an autobiography. I mean, it's your lens is changing daily, and
Yeah,
the way you remember things is, the way, I think emotionally, the way, if I go back to times in my life today, I might feel a certain way about it, but a week from now, I might feel different about it. So it's probably a constant, as you said, like, kind of work in progress that,
yeah.
like, really, yeah, there really should never be an end to an autobiography, but, like,
Till it's
but
over. Till it's over.
yeah, but I mean, it's yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. But I think that self reflection, and like kind of going back into some of that stuff and really dissecting it, and having to put it in words and look at it in black and white on paper,
Yeah.
um that does something too, right? Like, I think
Uh-huh.
that's a form of therapy.
Yeah.
I believe for
Yeah.
myself, when I'm writing about my past, it's like,
For sure.
it's therapeutic, and I get to investigate things that I uh, I'm only today able to look at with, like, through compassionate lens, or through,
Yeah.
rather than judging the things that I did or who I was, or which was something I would have done in the past. And you
Mhm.
know I'm always trying to look at these things that happened in my life, and yeah, almost kind of dissect it in a way that, who I am today, looking at that person, at that 20-year-old kid that was fucking his life up,
Yeah.
you know, um, I used to be upset with him. I used to be, but now I could be compassionate towards him, and I could be kind towards him, and kind of loving
Yeah.
in the way I write about it, and the way I reflect about it. And I really do feel like it's when I sit down with that stuff and really put pen to paper, I I do feel like it's a like a personal therapy session. And
Hmm.
it really helps me progress to that sort of next stage of my life, or that, kind of get that 1% better
Yeah.
um after I do that. So, I'd imagine that writing a whole autobiography it can be quite therapeutic, but as you said, also emotionally draining, and
Yeah.
you know time consuming for
Yeah.
sure too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll know when it's done, if it's ever done. And
Yeah.
I'm not in a rush. I just want to get back. I want it to be a regular thing that I do,
Yeah.
regardless of where it goes. It's nice to revisit a lot of that stuff and, keep it fresh.
So you do also a lot of speaking and podcast and this sort of thing, and
Yeah.
in some sort of form. Is that a way of kind of like giving back to people that have kind of like helped you along the way, and sort of like paying it forward, I guess, and in telling your story, and allowing somebody else that may be in the position that you once were in, to give them a little piece of hope?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for
Yeah.
sure, in a lot of ways. Just coming up and fighting, I never really had someone to look up to as,
Right.
oh, he did it before, I can do it too.
Yeah.
Not an American for sure, and not somebody
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
started so late or had the lifestyle that I did. So I've always, it's always been very important for me to be extremely vocal and open and vulnerable about my life and my struggles and the ups and the downs. And I know how important it is to not feel alone and to feel like somebody else understands what you're going through. And
Yeah.
so that has always encouraged me to express those things more. And, as I was fighting, I was always, putting that stuff out there, and, started doing it more and more and more. And as things progressed from there. So yeah, as you said, I've always felt a sense of responsibility
Yeah.
to give back and to share a lot of these things that I've gone through and struggled with, and um, the down times as well as the up times, because it's like
Right.
the first highlight video I ever did. The first 5 minutes I showed me just getting the shit kicked out of me,
Yeah.
because it's like the only thing you ever see in highlight videos is highlights, how great
Right.
people look, and you get a very skewed perception of what it takes to do this. You think,
Yeah.
oh, you just have to be a badass that kicks ass all the time and looks good all the time and feels good all the time. Like, well, how do you operate when things aren't going well? How do you
Yeah.
handle yourself when the world has turned its back to you? That's
Right.
what shows what somebody really is and who they really are. So, um, and it also humanizes us too, shows that we're all just the same. We all struggle, we all deal with a lot of the same things. And I think that's what keeps a lot of people from going after a lot of things, is because they don't feel like they were born with the right ingredients or the right lifestyle or whatever the case may be. Whereas it doesn't matter what you were born with. Like, we're all going to struggle. Everyone's going to have a certain percentage of gifts, a certain percentage of things that are working against them. And it's a gigantic spectrum in that. It's not just these little pieces that you think, oh, this is what you need to be successful, just X, Y, and Z. It's so much deeper than that. And the more that people understand that, I think the more successful we will all be and the better we will all be, because we realize that we're all just the same thing in a lot of ways. It's
Yeah.
just some people make choices, and some people become victims, and we're all victims of something. It's just, what are you going to do? What do you do with it? And that's the only
Right.
thing I've seen that differentiates successful and unsuccessful people, because it very rarely had anything to do with something they were born with or an external force, because with everything comes with something. Everything comes with a
Right.
weight, everything comes with a cost. And just because
Yeah.
something looks positive doesn't mean it's all positive, because it also comes
Yeah.
with some level of negativity. But we don't ever see
Definitely.
that. We only see the positive aspect of it. Everything comes
Yeah.
with something. Everything has a balance, the good and the bad. you know, you say you want this, but that's because you don't see what this comes with. You skip over
Yes.
that part.
Yeah.
And then when you get it, you're
Yeah.
like, fuck, I don't want this shit. I don't
Right.
want what this
Right.
comes with. Yeah. So it's like every good thing comes with a bad thing.
Yeah, I love that, man. And to show like a highlight reel of getting, you know, of the not so great times, the shitty times, the losses. Like I like, you know, everyone's gonna take losses, you know, and it really is. I believe, like, especially in fighting, you know, to lose. I think it's almost a blessing to lose the first fight or the first bunch of
The
fights,
best.
because,
It's the best.
you know, yeah, because then when you know, you don't have to wait to feel that high of winning, 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 and then that
Yeah.
dip of, I lost, I'm never gonna do this again because I'm shit. It's
Yeah.
just like, okay, I lost. I can only go up from here. I can quit
Yeah.
or I can go up,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's just like you said, it's with life, right? Like, you know, there's ups and downs, but you gotta accept those the down times, the lows, to get to those highs. And yeah, I love that, man. That's awesome.
Ideally, you want to answer that question the first day, because you don't want to answer that question 10 years from now and realize that you
Right.
just wasted 10 years doing something that you didn't actually love. You know,
Yeah.
if you can, there's this great Hulk Hogan story where when he started wrestling, his trainer snapped his shin in half the first day.
Okay.
And he's like, this
Yeah.
is going to happen eventually. You're going to get
Right.
fucking hurt. You're going to get really injured. Do you really want to do this? Because if you don't, I just saved you a lifetime
Sure.
by
Yeah.
showing you. I mean, that's pretty extreme, but if you can realize the first day you do something, if you still want to do it when things aren't going good, because
Right.
everybody wants to do it when things are great. Everyone
Of
wants to do
course.
shit when it's easy, when you're getting lots of
Yeah.
money and people are like, oh, you're so awesome, you're wonderful. Do you want to do this when you're getting the shit beat out of you, when everyone tells you how much of a failure you are and nobody
Right.
wants anything to do with you? You want to do it then you really want to do it.
Yeah, that's such a great perspective. I think it's really important too. I've really enjoyed, um, you know, following along and learning more about you and your story. It really is really quite remarkable. I love a story. I mean, a lot of what you say echoes what I've felt and experienced in my life. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's been really, really, you know, a pleasure to hear these things and be able to really connect and relate to
Yeah.
them. You know, the details are different, but the emotions are the same, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And you know, a story of somebody that's coming, you know, come from kind of like, you know, the mess, and
Yeah.
turned it around, and you know, become successful and now has a message.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing. And I really appreciate the way you share your message and your story, and, you know, your vulnerability and your open, honest testimony is really, it's quite inspiring. And I can imagine that anybody that's viewing or listening to this is going to get a lot of hope, a lot of inspiration, a lot of motivation from it. So, man, I want to thank you. And if people are looking to reach out, to follow you, to learn more about you, what are your social media handles where people can find you?
Yeah, for sure. First off, thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. It was great to talk to you. My
Yeah.
my website is thesoulasssassin.com. That's where I got all my merch and my books and things like that. Social media on Instagram and Twitter, it's DA Soul Assassin, the Soul Assassin. You can find me on there, even though I've been shadow banned for like 2 years. so
Yeah. Yeah.
so you know, but yeah, I'm pretty easy to find and get a hold of.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I'll put all those links in the show notes so people can access it easily. And you know, again, man, I just want to say thank you for your time and for your story, and you know, for your motivation and inspiration. It's been an honor to chat with you.
Hey, likewise, man, it's my pleasure.